Well, my own professional experience began coming out of college. I went to the University of Notre Dame and actually became a CPA early in my career. So perhaps the first 5 to 10 years was really focused heavily on accounting. And I had an interesting opportunity, a very fortunate one early on in my career, to become chief financial officer in my very early 30s and work for what was at the time the largest industrial commercial real estate developer in the state of Michigan. The interesting side to this story is I quickly realized as I got into that job that I knew my debits and credits quite well, but my two courses in undergraduate finance were a little bit on the short side. So as a result, I actually went to Walsh College myself and ended up earning a master's of science in finance. So that's a big building block on my career. Since that time, I have worked for a number of companies, primarily in the commercial real estate space. I've worked as a CFO. So in terms of my job responsibilities, I've had the opportunity to procure loans and debt capital for projects. I've been part of underwriting acquisitions and divestitures. I've been involved to some degree in raising equity capital, looking at financial statements, really having what I personally consider to be a very satisfying and rewarding and very interesting career. In my early to mid 50s, I had already been adjuncted at Walsh College for a number of years, but I actually switched gears and left the world of being a CFO adjunct and flipped that around to become a full-time academic while I still consult on the side. So I keep my fingers in the field, and I enjoy both elements, both the academics and the applied real-world experience immensely. I have a good life and a good situation. Well, I think that what makes Walsh faculty so unique in the world, and I don't think that you find this at many other educational institutions, is the fact that we have a faculty that are composed of what I call gentlemen or gentlewomen scholar practitioners. And by this, I mean that we bring the requisite academic credentials to the classroom. We are accomplished faculty that understand theory. But in most cases, our faculty bring, 20, 30, 40 years of private sector experience into the classroom. So, it's one thing as a student to be in a classroom and take a look at how things should work. And that's the theory part. And Walsh faculty are very good and solid at being able to lay out the fundamental principles in our field. But the overlay that I think really makes Walsh unique is when Walsh faculty will stop in the middle of class and say, okay, here's how theory works. Let's now talk about when things don't work exactly the way theory tells you it should. What do you do? And I know from a personal perspective, I bring all sorts of, I hate to say war stories, but I bring these personal experiences that I have faced myself where, if I'm going out and getting debt financing, or if I'm helping procure equity capital, or if I'm involved in acquisition and divestiture decisions, I'll tell how, all of a sudden you get a speed bump or a monkey wrench, and how do you handle these problems that nowhere do they show up in textbooks, but in real life they show up all the time. And so I think that our students that are exposed to both that theory and practical application in the classroom are better prepared to take on their job responsibilities once they graduate. Well, from my own personal perspective, let me talk about the commercial real estate class that I teach at Walsh College. And again, that fits into this prototype Walsh academic. I was a CFO in commercial real estate for well over 30 years. I still consult in the field. I have, again, the academic background as well. But my ability to tell students some things that never show up in textbooks. I'll give you just a quick story. We were dealing with a property that was repossessed by a bank many years ago and had an environmental problem. So I can talk about the structure of the deal that we made buying it, where we committed to a certain amount of costs and then relieved ourselves of the risk exposure past a certain financial level. I'll also tell the story about how the environmental problem was created by a dry cleaners that was hiding the fact that they were dumping what's known as PERC. It's a cleaning agent in the dry cleaning business in the back of their property location by the garbage bin, and this perk was literally eating through concrete. And this property actually was in California. It was next to Interstate 5, which, if you're familiar with California, there's thousands of cars that go north and south every day, and you can't close down the freeway to clean this problem up. That's an example of a situation that no textbook would ever apply to. Yet, if you happen to be in the field, if you have an interest in commercial real estate, this is the kind of stuff that shows up. And again, that's that advantage that Walsh faculty. I have that example in commercial real estate. I know of all my faculty colleagues, from their own specific personal experiences, can bring stories just like that to the classroom, and that makes a difference. I think that the biggest development in higher education that maybe doesn't get talked enough about is the evolution of both video and audio technologies over the last decade. So at Walsh, we have a couple of formats that we teach you. We have the traditional live classroom, and we have the traditional online delivery that's asynchronous, where you're doing it on your own time. The very interesting evolution, and this has been prompted a little bit by COVID, or certainly accelerated, is that we have what we call VS and VH formats. And VS essentially is teaching via Zoom. VH is teaching our classroom with video screens that allow a student to either show up in person or tune in through Zoom. And for me, this was all new 5 years ago. But what has happened is I have actually found it to be extremely productive in terms of the ability to use technology. Yeah, I don't have a board up in front of the classroom like I did 10 years ago. I have a screen on a Zoom that I can draw on. I can type things. I actually find it to be sometimes superior because, in my field, we use a lot of Excel spreadsheets. We're doing analytics. I can tell a student to bring up a blank Excel sheet, and then we as a class can literally work through together on that spreadsheet and use that as a learning experience. I think that's even more effective than on a whiteboard in the front of the classroom. And the more remarkable feature of it is, again, because of the technology, we can tape and video each of those sessions. So what we do is we post it for students. So if you happen to have a soccer game that night that's important, you're raising your family, you end up being able to miss a class. In the old days, you'd have to have somebody take good notes for you. Now you can just hit a button, and it may not be live, but you can participate in 100% of what happened in that class. I've had some other instances where students, again, using video technology, will all of a sudden remove themselves from class for 5 minutes so they can put their kids to bed, which I love, because that's the ability for students to mix real life with their academics. They have the opportunity to be in a live classroom and be an active participant, yet at the same time, they don't have to compromise their many obligations to work and to family and to everybody else. So I have found it to be incredibly productive. One thing I'll add too is you talk about technology today and delivering. I enjoy teaching in the VS format, which is you can access via Zoom. It's a live class. Again, you have the tape recording, so if you want to do it non-synchronous, you can do that. But in the last year, I have had students from South Dakota and from Ghana. The person for Ghana was a great student. We get up at 2 a.m. Ghana time to participate in this Zoom class being held at Walsh College. So from my mind, the possibilities for a high quality, high contact education using technology in today's world is there. And I think that as students and professors, myself included, I've had a learning curve here, but as we become more familiar with it, I think it's going to be something that is very appealing because it retains all the flexibility that traditional online brings to the table, but it also allows for the one-on-one live contact with a faculty member that's always been a hallmark of a traditional classroom. So in my mind, you mix and match the best of both, and I think it makes for a tremendously satisfying and fulfilling academic experience in the classroom. Well, I think first and foremost, in the field of finance, the essential skill that employers are looking for is critical thinking. Because think about the nature of finance. Now, I have a background in accounting and finance, so I have a personal affection for both fields. But if we're being analytical about accounting and finance, accounting is really looking from today and in the current and into the past. You're taking the information, you're categorizing it properly, you're presenting it in a way that creates consistent and informative information for people to use. Very important. I got started in accounting. I had a good career there. I think one of the things that makes finance and why I have spent most of my career in finance is that it tends to be chronologically focused on today, looking for the future. So we're making decisions that have no firm answer. Because again, we're looking forward in time. And so as a result, to really excel in finance, you need to have these critical thinking skills, because you have to predict, you have to put together the clues of all this information you get from accountants and from other sources of information, and take a look at potential decision alternatives, and then turn them into recommendations. And I always tell my classrooms, if you really think about the world of finance, you're not going to be right 100% of the time. If you take an accounting class, you can get 100 because the accounting rules are what they are. But in finance, you're being asked to come up with good recommendations based upon the data in front of you. And so we talk about detailed technical skills like time value of money principles, weighted average cost of capital. I can go on and on with the alphabet soup on the technical side. But at the end of the day, I think what makes finance interesting, and I think what makes finance majors highly attractive to employers, is that we're training them to take a look at information, take a look at context and scenarios, and try to come up with well thought out, well-reasoned recommendations. So if you end up being like a financial analyst, what do you build that new machine or not? If you're a banker, do you make that loan or not? If you are sitting and being a financial planner and trying to help people prepare for their future at age 30, how do you map out a roadmap of investing that's going to help them? These are all forward-looking decisions that require those type of critical thinking skills. And that's why I think that finance is one of those careers that, as technology changes, the underpinnings of finance are not going to go away. Increases and improvements in technology are simply going to give more tools for finance graduates to use at their disposal. But the critical core thing that they bring to the table, this ability to intellectually take a look at a situation and analyze it and come up with a recommendation, that's going to be a lifelong lasting attribute that's going to cause finance majors to always be in demand. I think that the real important thing to keep in mind is that, to become an accomplished financial professional, you need a really solid education, you need work experience and mentorship. And I think the way to look at a bachelor's degree is that it provides graduates with the basic level of skills. So what you achieve by being a bachelor's graduate in finance out of Walsh College is you are now qualified to take on an entry position in a financial field. And examples would be banking, financial investment firms, corporate finance departments. So what this does is it gives you that layer that gets you in the door. And from that point forward, whether you decide to progress based on work experience and being mentored by, at the companies where you are, or if you look to even deepen your finance knowledge even further by getting a master's degree at Walsh College. Those are the things that you can build up. But the bachelor's degree, I think realistically, it qualifies you to get into this very interesting field. And it's the gateway that, without that bachelor's degree, you won't be able to get into these career path institutions and companies. One of the things that a bachelor's degree in finance at Walsh College would open the door towards would be for a graduate to take the Chartered Financial Analyst exam, typically known as the CFA exam. And the best analogy for the CFA exam is the finance equivalent of the CPA exam in accounting. except I'll argue that it's actually a little bit better because the CPA exam is recognized in the United States, and other nations across the globe have their own certification. The CFA exam, very interestingly, is global. It is a single credentialing body that creates the CFA designation. This is the gold standard of finance, and especially in today's world where there's a lot of opportunities to work for companies that have an international presence or have at least dealings with countries across the globe. The CFA credential will evidence your mastery of material in the area of investments, in terms of corporate finance, banking, economics. It covers a wide variety of areas. A little bit about the exam. It's actually a three-part exam, level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 is offered a little bit more frequently, but typically it'll take about a year and a half under optimal conditions to pass it. It's a very demanding exam. Our curriculum is lined up to get you prepared to know everything that you need to know for level 1. And so that's a tremendous gateway. As a graduate with a CFA designation, you will get a lot of respect in an interview because that will serve as evidence of your technical and analytical competencies in the field. So we encourage heavily both our undergraduate and our graduate students to consider the CFA exam because much like the CPA, I happen to be a CPA that helped my own accounting career. We have a number of CFAs on our faculty, and they will tell you that the CFA exam works the exact same way, where it opens doors and gives you instant respect if you happen to be looking for an opportunity within the field. Well, from my perspective, if you happen to walk out of Walsh with your finance degree, there's a number of different options. And I think that's one of the things that's actually attractive about the world of finance is there's so many different ways to go. And to some degree that you can be an introvert and find a spot in finance that suits you well, but you can be an extrovert too within all these fields. I tell my students oftentimes that there's 3 major food groups in the world of finance. One is banking. And I think people sometimes don't realize how much variety and how much financial success you can get in the world of banking. You look at different areas like credit, loan production. I have a number of graduates that I've had in past years at Walsh College that have risen up to very high ranks at both national and regional banks. And I look at them and they have had very successful careers and an incredibly wide experience within those companies. A second area is corporate finance. And that's the way that I personally took. I ended up initially starting in the field of accounting, but I worked my way up to be a chief financial officer in corporate America. And that too also is an interesting field. I mean, you can be involved in financial statement analysis. And in my case, I was negotiating loans. I was putting together capital structures for companies. I was heavily involved in acquisition of properties because I was in commercial real estate. And then the third area is financial services and financial planning. And graduates there, have the opportunity to really have a positive impact on other people's lives by putting together plans that allow them to lead successful and happy lives, be able to afford things, enjoy their retirement. So I think, interestingly enough, I think that all 3 of these major pathways, if you're concerned as to make good money, it's there in any of those fields. But I actually get more excited by the fact that each of those pathways also they're all very interesting. They can lead to a lot of personal satisfaction. And I would argue, finally, that in each of these areas, there's opportunities to do a lot of good for the world around you. In the world of finance, it's just not about only making a career and making money, although we prepare students to get a good return on those tuition dollars that they invest in us. But I think that there really is an opportunity to be an agent of positive change, whether it's within the corporations or companies that they work with or the customers that they serve. There's a wide variety of students that are in our MSF program. I think that the folks that tend to enjoy the most success in it is somebody who's a permanent learner. somebody who's always intellectually curious, because I think that the tools in the world of finance, again, you're looking at making decisions that are really future based. So you're dealing with a world of unknowns. And I think in order to be really successful in that field, you have to have that curiosity to ask a lot of questions, because I think in some ways, this perhaps is a corny analogy, but I had a daughter that used to watch NCIS and talk about, solving riddles, in the world of crime and medicine. And she always wanted to go in that field because of the detective work. Finance is actually, within the business world, the exact same thing. There's a real opportunity to try to define the riddle, try to figure out ways to get your clues. So I'd actually say that the finance majors are business detectives in many ways, because they're trying to figure things out. You clearly have to have some quantitative skills, because we are a technical field. We deal with numbers, but I also we have a lot of students who come in who are surprised by how much your qualitative skills are necessary as well. Because if you come up with a suggestion or a business idea, you have to sell it to somebody. And as a result, one of the things that we do in the program, and I think we do a nice job, where students coming in with an interest and raw talent, we over the course of their Walsh degree try to hone their skills, but we want them to be intellectually curious. We want them to learn the technical aspects of their trade, and we want to help them polish up their ability to be able to present to others, and frankly become leaders within their organizations. And so I will tell you, we've had a wide variety of skill sets that come in the door. We are incredibly proud of the graduates that we send out the door. And I, to this day, enjoy getting phone calls or having breakfast or a cup of coffee or lunch with students from my classroom from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and now getting close to 30 years ago. They've had really successful careers. And I think to a person, they appreciate the educational experience that they got at Walsh College as a result of the faculty and the material and the program that they were able to participate in. So some of the things that students have access to as part of their Walsh experience, one of the things I take great pride in is our finance lab. And we have access to various databases, but the flagship database that we are tied to is Bloomberg. And Bloomberg is the cutting edge. It's the most recognized name out there. The enormity of the information that you can extract from Bloomberg is actually very hard to describe. Again, I'm a storyteller. One of the things that fascinated me the first time I got into Bloomberg software was hitting a button and finding the location of every oil tanker in the ocean on a given day. Who would have thought of that? But from a business standpoint, that's important information to know. We, through Bloomberg, offer a course that's known as BMC. And the BMC is basically a certification that indicates that you understand the Bloomberg software. You can work your way around it. You can extract information, which is actually a pretty impressive credential because of how robust and rich the Bloomberg software is. If you are BMC certified, as a person coming into a job interview, you will impress somebody if you are BMC certified. And Bloomberg software is used extensively throughout the private sector. And so our ability to give you access and exposure to Bloomberg, we use Bloomberg in virtually all of our classes in some way, shape, or form. It's so big that it has application across fields. And so students will see Bloomberg quite frequently during their stay at Walsh College, and that translates into value add skills in the corporate workplace, because so many places use Bloomberg nowadays. I think one of the things that I really enjoy at Walsh College, it's one thing to run a classroom, and I have to admit I'm biased because I've sat through some really boring classrooms over many, many years. The Walsh experience is distinctly different. And I think a lot of it is a result of our student body. In many cases, not all, but in many cases, our students have exposure to life. They're dealing with personal obligations, professional obligations. They want to advance their education. I think if you put them all together, they're very interesting people. And so what I like to do in my classroom is really get the students engaged. The last thing in the world that they want to experience is Professor Moore sitting in front of a pulpit and droning on from a set of notes or running through a bunch of slides. I think that this ties into our philosophy at Walsh College, which is you got to get your fingernails dirty in the classroom. We got to work through problems. We got to apply concepts. We need to throw scenarios at them that don't necessarily correspond exactly to how life's supposed to work in the textbook. And so one of the things I like about the Walsh classroom is students are actively involved. They're intellectually engaged. And my obligation as a teacher, sometimes people, when it comes to higher education, think that the words fun and learning are 180 opposites from one another. I'd like to argue that what makes the Walsh classroom experience so unique is that we, I think better than any other institution, I have 3 master's degrees, a doctorate, and an undergraduate degree. So I've been in a lot of college classrooms. I think one of the things that Walsh truly excels at is our classrooms are intense. We work hard together, both faculty and students. But as a result of the culture of the classroom at Walsh College, we do learn a lot, and we actually have some smiles and some laughs at it. Again, I'll give a little bit of a war story. I teach our finance capstone class, which is a simulation, and I like to get in front of students. So we divide into different companies, and some students are going to be on teams that finish on top, and some students are going to be on teams that finish at the bottom, and they're all good students. But I lay out the law in that class. I said, hey, in finance, we're trying to predict the future. We're not always right. I said, the reason I'm at the front of the classroom in teaching is because I'm smart because of so many mistakes that I made over the course of my career. Now, they haven't been mortal because I'm here and I've done fairly well for myself, but it's part of the nature of finance that you're trying to predict the future. If you're right most of the time, you're going to have a very fine career and a very successful career. But I say to them in this capstone course, get used to adversity, because in the simulation where you're competing against each other, it's not like a textbook answer in a classroom where everybody can get the answer 100% correct. You're going to be competing with other people, just like in the real world. And if you stub your toe, I said, we're going to sit down about it. I'll talk to you about it. We're going to laugh about it. And remember, you're using monopoly money, but you're going to be very well prepared in the real world when you're seeing the boardroom, when you're facing adversity, and you're going to be the person that has the personal character, the technical skills, the demeanor to be successful under those circumstances and to be very valuable to the company that you're working for.